There is an English aphorism, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, and that is an acute representation of how Pakistan is still staying afloat. As of September 2020, and I've gone at great length in a video that's I'm sure been uploaded on YouTube to explain how Pakistan is a bankrupt country. About 2 years ago, they were selling to the world a story that they discovered a huge oil field off the coast of Karachi. Their ministers were talking about it. It's all a lie. There's no oil off the coast of Karachi. And that was their hope. A few years before that, and when Nawaz Sharif was Prime Minister, they claimed to have discovered a huge gold mine in Pakistan. That was their hope. The reality is that Imran Khan has been trying to sell hair, sell donkeys, try to sell his own cars, which nobody bought incidentally, but they're not being able to find money. Pakistan almost wholly doesn't have many exports. Trade with India is almost zero now. It almost wholly relies on the little bit of foreign remittances it gets to keep its foreign exchange reserves afloat. Here's a reality check. Pakistan is currently sitting on forex reserves of between $15 to $18 billion. India now has forex reserves of north of $500 billion. Puts it into context. Of these $18 billion, if Pakistan actually started to repay its loans, just the interest, forget the loans itself, they would not be able to pay those loans for more than a month. Now the reality is that the $60 billion that CPEC investment, huge investment of $60 billion that the Chinese are putting in, the Chinese make $60 billion in 1 year trade profit with India. Just 1 year of trade profit with India is $60 billion for the Chinese, and that's the sum total of the CPEC investments. So here's a fact check. Now within this, about 18 months ago, when push came to shove and Pakistan almost was on the verge of a debt default, the Saudis lent them $1 billion, then lent them another billion, the UAE lent them $1 billion. Well, last month the Saudis wanted their money back. Now we are being told the Emiratis also want their money back. Pakistan doesn't have, it's a huge sinkhole. It doesn't have the money to give it back. The only way that they can return the money to any other lender is to borrow from someone else. The IMF is insisting that any money lent by it can't be used to service other debt. The Americans are not going to be lending Pakistan more money. So it's the only hope is China. We are very seriously looking at the prospect of a Pakistani debt default, which means their inability to even service the interest of their creditors, both internal and external. The financial crisis is already happening. It's a real thing. Food inflation is a real thing. Current account deficit is a real thing. Within all of this, if you've been tracking the news out of the Emirates, the biggest kick in the stomach is going to be, because the murmurs have already started, where several of the ministers have been suggesting that Pakistanis working in the Middle East due to their behavior are no longer welcome. Once the Saudis kick out what they pay to Pakistan for employing soldiers from Pakistan, both in security and in frontline activities, those soldiers incidentally, very infamously a few months ago, when attacked by a Yemeni rebel group, cut and ran. They ran away, all of them. So that's the quality of that valor. The Pakistani economy is going to collapse. Now we have to ask ourselves, how much will China keep spending to keep it afloat? Let me open up this conversation. Ambassador Suresh Kumar Goyal joining us on the broadcast. Sumit Peer is with us, General Katoch is with us, and Dr. Vaheel Awadh is with us as well. Ambassador Goyal, we're looking at a very real prospect, sir. We have seen economic turmoil in our country. 30 years ago, we were also before the IMF with, I think, 2-3 weeks of forex reserves left. We had no money to import petrol. I remember buses in Delhi had to be stopped. I was just started off going to school, and we got a few weeks of vacation because there's no petrol to run buses. So we've seen tough times. We don't wish tough times upon the Pakistani people. But it's a sinkhole. If the Saudis and the Emiratis demand their money back, how long do you think can Pakistan borrow from Peter to pay Paul?
That's a very good question. There are two things which come to mind immediately. First of all, as you rightly pointed out, the Pakistani economy is in a very bad shape. The debt today stands at about 87% of the GDP, at about $87 billion. $113 billion is about 87% of the GDP, which is actually huge. The revenue collection is just about $100 billion a year. So considering all these things, how long Pakistan is going to be able to support its lavish budget, particularly in regard to defense, where it is spending something about 12% of the budget? It's a question to ask really. Therefore, the fact that unless Pakistan is able to do a serious rethink about its economic priorities and about its income generation, it's in deep difficulty. Saudi Arabia will recall, UAE is calling, IMF is giving only $600 million, and that too with very difficult conditions. The only source who will rescue Pakistan is China, basically not because it loves Pakistan, but it has deep strategic interests in the Indian Ocean, and Pakistan is one country which is going to provide access to China through the Gwadar port into the Indian Ocean. Now the question here is, what can Pakistan do? I think...
Okay, in fact, the question I'd like to ask Ambassador Goyal, and it's a very serious question. 1963, the Pakistanis gave over thousands of square kilometers of a tract of land, which is actually Indian territory in the Shaksgam Valley. Now, I have a genuine fear, sir, that when the Chinese, knowing that there's no way, Chinese are not fools, they understand business well, they also run an economy, they know there's no way in heck the Pakistanis can ever pay them back. So they're going to be demanding assets in lieu of these debts. My fear is that a lot of these assets along the CPEC, which the Pakistanis will cede over, which eventually will be tracts of Indian territory. How serious is that risk, sir?
That is actually a very serious risk, and that is the problem that India faces very seriously. Because where Pakistan is heading is practically like a colony of China. China is using the debt trap to essentially colonize Pakistan, and pretty soon Pakistan will have no option but to basically sell, mortgage, whatever it is, but behave really like a colony of China, and we will have China right on our western flank also. Apart from the northern flank, China will be on our neighbor through Pakistan. And that's a very serious threat to us.
And that then makes another dynamic, because if our committed goal is the reintegration of the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir, if more areas are under Chinese security, whether by proxy, in real, or by default, it makes another complicated dynamic. So yes, the collapse of Pakistan is not simply something for us to cheer about, it's something for us to equally worry about. Now, General Katoch, I don't know if I should be saying this, but I'm going to reveal a small secret. Well, it's not much of a secret. We've been talking about this LOC ceasefire. For people watching this broadcast, why do you think this LOC ceasefire has happened? Of course, there are geostrategic reasons. But a strong part of the reason is, General Katoch, that Pakistan can't afford to expend munitions anymore. They don't have the money to replace them. It's a very reality. I remember 6 or 8 months ago discussing with somebody, on this off camera, and they were saying that they can't replace their munitions. If you keep firing and they keep firing back, eventually they'll run out. And here's a reality check. So General Katoch, the situation, of course, for them is dire, is desperate. And if the Saudis and Emiratis stop giving money and in fact starting demanding the money back, what do you suspect is going to happen?
Firstly, Rishabh, I think when you spoke of the ceasefire, this has really benefited the Pakistanis, because I totally agree with you, and that was my assessment right from day one, that Pakistan can no longer afford to have a line of control which is in which cross-border firing continues to take place on a daily basis.
Okay, can you help our viewers understand this? Although the LOC ceasefire is a good thing, okay, so we buy it, it's a good thing.
No, it's a good thing.
But okay, let this help me, General Katoch. The reason I'm interrupting you is because our viewers will understand this. Okay, here's a reality check. a terrorist, take Ajmal Kasab for example, 2 lakh Pakistani rupees was given to his family. You've given him an AK-47, 10-15 magazines, a few grenades and some dry fruit. Okay, that's the cost of a terror, and Pakistan is turning a terrorist into a weapon. So that's how they do a cost of a terrorist. 3-4 lakh rupees creates a terrorist. To actually fire artillery shells, to keep a battery running, let's say for a few hours, how much does that cost, General Katoch, in real terms?
I think it is going to be in crores. It's a very expensive business to fire artillery and mortar shells. Each shell costs a huge amount. Even the 2-inch mortar, the 81 millimeter mortar shells, the Pakistanis have the 82 millimeters. Even those shells, they cost a huge amount of money. And we aren't talking in terms of firing 1 or 2 shells. Then they will be fired in the hundreds. So I think the sheer economics of it has put Pakistan down. And that was the reason they actually pleaded for a ceasefire, which India was very gracious to accept. Because, well, that is the right thing to do.
Correct.
Of course, as I've already stated in your channel, it simply means that there will be a commitment on the part of Pakistan not to continue with cross-border terrorism. Because if Pakistan continues with that, then all bets are off, and we will get back to giving them the
we are keeping all options on the table.
Across
so,
the
okay,
LOC.
so my issue is not that.
Yeah.
General Katoch, my issue is not that Pakistan will face economic ruin. It's already within economic ruin. And there's nothing developing there. There is no miracle oil find or miracle gold mine that they've discovered. All of this is all fake news. So once they get into this debt trap in which the Saudis are no longer their saviors, if the Emiratis are no longer their saviors, then it's only China, because the Americans are not going to be duped again, hopefully. Eventually, then China owns large tracts of Pakistan. What do we do then?
You see, I think the problem for India is not so much Gilgit-Baltistan, though that, of course, is a problem. I view the problem much more seriously as Gwadar, because the way they have taken over Hambantota for 99 years, I think if they take over Gwadar also, and that becomes, in effect, Chinese territory, I think that imposes a much more serious threat as far as India is concerned. And the way China is going and the way Pakistan is getting into this debt trap, I see that as more and more of a distinct possibility.
Yeah, but that's already happened, sir. It's already happened. A few weeks ago, the police in and around Karachi have already started, have gone there, and they've started barricading the port of Gwadar because the Chinese companies are building up there, and they've already given them a free trade agreement, which means any goods that come in out of to China, from China to Pakistan, or go from Pakistan to China, zero import duty. There's a 30-year tax waiver. These things have already happened. So the only thing we are waiting for is the Indo-Pacific fleet of China to be based out of Gwadar. That's the only thing we're waiting for now, General Katoch.
And that is going to happen within the next 10 years. This I have made a very categorical statement, though of course in this circle it's not correct to make such assumptions. But I have got no doubts. We are waiting. Within the next 10 years, you will see this happening. Gwadar will become something like what Hong Kong was to the British. So Pakistan has lost this territory, and they will be in no position to reclaim it.
Okay.
Now, slowly and steadily, Pakistan will lose more and more of its assets, and that I think is a bigger danger to the Pakistanis themselves than what it is to India. For India, we have to look into the sea routes and to see how best we can negate any Chinese influence in that particular area.
Okay, but what do we do when a neighbor is standing with a gun on his head, and constantly threatening to commit suicide? How do we stop them? Now, it's better for them, it's better for us, but they don't seem to get it. Let me quickly get Dr. Wael Awadh before I get Sumit Peer into the conversation. Dr. Awadh, of course, this plays into the dynamics that is taking place, and there is a fight, then some rapprochement. There's another fight between the Saudis and Pakistanis has been going on for some time now. That summit that was organized in Malaysia, sir, which wanted to replace the OIC. At the very last minute, Imran Khan did not attend, I'm assuming because of Saudi interference. So what is the larger dynamic that is resulting in the Emirates and the Saudis not being very keen on their monetary transactions with Pakistan anymore?
Well, I think it is depending on the bilateral relation with these countries, because for recently Pakistan have shifted toward Turkey, where they are having a little of problem of dealing with the Turkish, especially the Saudis, where they feel that Turkey is trying to take the lead in the Islamic world, and also UAE, which having also a rift with the Ankara because of Libya, because of the development in the intervention there and there, where they are having a conflict of interest. So therefore, there is also the rejection of Pakistan to take part in the Yemen war, which is led by Saudi Arabia, also have led to this resentment. But let's say that the American and the Saudis and the UAE and the Chinese are the four countries who only can bail out the Pakistani out of their misery or the economic misery. So therefore, if Saudi Arabia and UAE are pulling out, it's just because they are putting more pressure on the Pakistani. But if tomorrow the United States said to them, okay, pen the payment, and there is a 6 billion coming from the IMF, which 2 billion already have been said, as Ambassador has stated. So therefore, there is, of course, there are signs of maybe helping the Pakistani. But I think overall, Rishabh, the challenges to the Pakistan economy is tremendous. The investors are running away. They are not interested except for China. So if India, seriously, if you want me to be the devil advocate here, I think India can play a much better role to make sure that the Balance Act should be there, where Pakistan does not drift into a country which poses security concern to India, like they have done with Sri Lanka, with Bangladesh, with Myanmar, with even Maldives. So
but Dr. Vairavad, you asked the multi-billion-dollar 80-year question, right? And I know generations before me have been trying to answer it. I know generations after me will be trying to answer it. If we are dealing with a country where we've tried the Samjhauta Express and the Vajpayee's visit to Lahore, we've tried the trade agreements, we've offered the most favored nation status, we've done everything we could, and if it's just not willing to accept it, what can we possibly do?
I think India is still doing consistently this pressure, and also look, economically, politically, and internationally, India have proven that it is a very strong wicket, a stick wicket. Pakistan is a very vulnerable and already been exposed, especially by India. So let's see, this agreement on the LOC could be one sign of the coming days. Let us wait for some time, and I think there are signs of maybe easing out the pressure between the two countries. And I think India is reasonably wiser in the diplomatic front to understand the overall picture.
Yes, well, you're a man who's an optimist, sir. I've been speaking with you for the better part of more than 10 years now. So it's always happy to have you on the broadcast. Let me get the pessimist on the panel then. Sumit Peer, I don't think he trusts the Pakistanis very much or is hopeful about changing their ways. Sumit, in a very real sense, we've discussed this. You simply shut off India-Pakistan trade, and that's the punishment. That's because they don't care when the terrorists get taken out, right? For them, it's cannon fodder, right? In fact, it's cheaper than, as I just mentioned, it's cheaper to a terrorist is cheaper for Pakistan than a battery of munitions to fire across the LOC. Here's a reality check. In this regard, Sumit, economic pressure is important pressure, perhaps the biggest important pressure. But now, what do we do? If the Chinese simply go and take over everything, that's also not good news for us. So if the Pakistan economy is failing, which we know it is, what do we do about it?
I think, Rishabh, Pakistan has reached a point where it is destined to break up, and the breakup of Pakistan into 3-4 nations is the best thing for India to happen. Because today, who can save Pakistan? I'll give one statistic. The $14 billion which you were talking, Rishabh, rightly, where does the money come? Money has come from the repatriation of expats who have repatriated their money after they've been haunted across the whole world. Why is UAE calling the money? Because there was a bomb blast in UAE and ISI hand has been found in it, along with the Pakistani diaspora. Remember, there were 5,000 Pakistanis who were picked up in UAE and locked, because that is where they are recalling their money. So when you and your diaspora globally are involved in this international terrorism, how can you expect people to bail you out? If China bails you out, they will ask a chunk for a pound of flesh from you. For us, to bailing you out is wasting our money. It is better you disintegrate. You might have 4 nations in the process, and we might end up having good relations with the 3. Because it's your evolution, your karma. You have been selling the family silver to pay the grocer. You have been selling your country inch by inch. How can we help you in that? And why should we help you in that? As far as the humanity is concerned, Rishabh, we are sending them the vaccines. That is the best we can do. But I don't think any Indian on this earth will avouch for sending even $1 to Pakistan to help them bail out. Let them break. So we'll deal with Pakistan the way it comes. Even today, aren't we dealing with Pakistan? I have one more point to make, Rishabh. I did a Google search, Rishabh, and I was trying to find out how much is a good bakra, a healthy bakra. Bakra means a goat. Cost in Pakistan. It costs 1.5 to 2 lakh rupees. And that is exactly the money they pay to Kasab. So if you can get a jihadi for the cost of a bakra, so it is much easier to sustain the jihadis rather to fight
which
mortars.
is why I gave
which
the
you are right
example, which is a very
expensive.
sad example to give, but that's the reality check. Now,
That's reality, Rishabh. It's the YouTube videos. Anybody can Google and find.
yeah,
That's
no,
not what I'm saying.
they're done by. In fact, the Pakistani channel itself went and found out that 2 lakh rupees was given. And Kasab confessed this in his confessions here when his trial was taking place. Okay, Ambassador Goel, the conundrum I'm sure you dealt with your entire career. Your hair have turned grey thinking about it. I'm sure mine will turn grey also, sir. They already are thinking about this. The perennial conundrum. You have a country with a gun on its head. Every time you try to put pressure, it threatens suicide. If you don't pressure, it tries to bite and kick you. So what do we do then?
Rishabh, as you rightly said, this is a conundrum we have been facing for the last 70 years, and I think we will have to face for some more time. My own judgment call on this really is, we need to look at what our options are. Either we have an option of Pakistan completely controlled by China, not just controlled, but actually owned by China, and therefore having to face an adversary, not just on the north, but also on the west. Please do realize that till Pakistan was not completely owned by China, there is still hope. But once Pakistan is totally in the basket of China, there is no hope whatsoever. It's a pincer. That is number one. Number two, how do we get Pakistan to behave sensibly and realize that this is not to their advantage to really sell the family silver or to get into the debt trap in this manner? Or not to, I think more importantly, not to have this adversarial relationship with India. I think that's a hope we have to live with. Unfortunately, that hope has not been realized for the last 70 years. But I do think that gradually, as they realize that they don't have money even to buy the bullets and the ammunition,
Yes.
they will realize where they are going and look at their sensible options. Till that happens, we will have to continue to
Okay,
face this.
I can tell you
A
that-
broken, sorry, but just one more point.
Yeah.
A broken up Pakistan is not a good option for India. It will be a den of terrorists.
Okay. Well, I can tell you that that's already happened in the sense that they don't have the money to buy the bullets anymore for the ammunition. Okay. The one address, Sumit, I see you. I'm going to come to you in just a second. General Katoch, $23 billion is what Pakistan is getting in remittances right now. Record levels of remittances have been happening over the past couple of years, which itself is very, very suspicious. I'm assuming that some money is being routed into Pakistan in the guise of remittances. But anyway, that's a separate conversation. You take away those $23 billion or even a take away percentage of them, that's it. Game's over. And FATF can do that. You put Pakistan under FATF's greater scrutiny, then every global bank transaction into Pakistan becomes suspect. Bank linkages from SWIFT codes that operate out of the Europe and out of America will no longer link up with Pakistani banks, and that's the death blow. Should we strike a death blow and then bring them to the table? Because the last time we took a death blow in 71, brought them to the table, we didn't seem to achieve very much.
Rishabh, I think it is time to strike the death blow, and there will be no need to bring them to the table. Now, there were certain points which were brought, but I just want to give a very, very quick rebuttal. You know, the question of a pincer logic that if Chinese come into Pakistan, it will be a complete pincer against India. Well, I look at it in a different way. Let the Chinese come into Pakistan and control them. You will find a great deal of resistance from the Pakistanis themselves against this Chinese occupation, which will drag down China in a manner which they have not foreseen. So it works both ways. This is one. Number two, the question of having friendship with a country like Pakistan, which Dr. Awad was mentioning, it is not going to work. For a very long time, even our foreign policy mandarins would say that a strong and stable Pakistan is in the best interest of India. Now, this conversation started about 20 or 30 years ago, and mercifully it stopped sometime in about 2007, 2008. Now, I think the correct conversation is we need to break this country into manageable bits segregate Punjab, separate Baluchistan and Sindh, and the northern provinces of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, merge them with Afghanistan. That is the only way peace and stability will come to this region.
Okay.
It will also resolve this dilemma of the Chinese coming into Gwadar. They will not have access to the ports. So I think we have to look at it from a totally different way.
I think this requires
Let
this merit scrutiny. Finish your
just
thoughts.
one point to issue. You know, we have got to stop this mindset of being friends with Pakistan. Let us understand Pakistan is an enemy. So long as you deal with it as an enemy, we can deal with it appropriately. Otherwise, we will continue in this, we will continue to get bogged down, and it is not going to work. We will continue on our part. Pakistan is irrelevant to us. Now we are looking at other countries. We are looking at China. We are looking at becoming a big power on our own. Pakistan is simply a side issue. Let us leave it as a side issue.
I agree with the premise that our over-obsessive focus, and I promise you, and it applies right here where I'm sitting, about 5 years ago, I would have spent morning, evening, night discussing Pakistan, and you would have spent morning, evening, night, watching it, because it's the go-to topic on television when in doubt to discuss Pakistan. That's changed because we should not obsess about it. We should focus on it when it is required, but not obsess about it. But there merits a conversation of the fear of a balkanization of Pakistan. Do you create another Syria, Lebanon mess, or do you actually achieve your strategic objectives? There is a good example in the creation of Bangladesh, but there are very bad examples in West Asia as well. So it's not an easy one, granted. Sumit Peer wants to make a point, and I'll leave the last word to Dr. Awad.
I think, Rishabh, just 2 or 3 quick points to it. First of all, today the story of Pakistan is Bikhari Pakistan, Katora Khan. A lot of people used to take offense of it. It has come true. Now tell me, Rishabh, what is happening in Pakistan? We are being threatened about China. Aren't we dealing with China? Haven't we handled China? What is that fear of China which we are always trying to frighten ourselves? We can deal with China. And let me tell you, sir, with China, you still have trade. China is a country which has something to gain or lose from India. Pakistan is a failed jihadi who has nothing to lose. Pakistan is a terrorist with no demands. No trade, nothing. And the money what you are seeing is Pakistan is their diaspora's money. It's not the FDI. It is not their export money. It's not. It is the money which Pakistanis across the world have sent there because they are haunted there. And now this money is also at risk. So let them fail, let them doom, let them dismantle, and we will deal with it.
Okay.
China or no China,
okay.
China
There
is
are
not a
two
problem.
straight arguments, and I'll leave it to the people watching this broadcast because the chapter, of course, is not closed with this conversation. One argument can be made that 1991, the reason that the Soviet Union collapsed and therefore opened up and brought a little bit, smidgen, if not democracy to Russia, at least to some of the former Soviet republics, was because of an economic collapse. So that's a good example of how a system that was detrimental to global welfare, dogged in ideology and not good for its own people, collapsed because of an economic collapse, which was forced because the Americans simply outspent them everywhere else and they ran out of money. So that's glasnost and perestroika for you. Now something similar, one could assume, could happen in Pakistan, or you could see a state that is collapsing and then is selling its nuclear weapons to the highest bidder. All sorts of things can happen also. So it's not a conversation that's an easy one, but certainly our policy on putting Pakistan on the mat has dealt more dividends than sending them dossier after dossier. Let me quickly leave the last word to Dr. Wael Awad. Dr. Awad, I know you're a believer that Pakistan can reform itself. When will that pivot point, sir? When is your hope that transition point, that pivot point will happen? Because you haven't seen it yet.
Well, I think, Rishabh, there is a history taught us that any country based on ideology being formed is doomed to exist. That we have already learned 73 years ago, and I think Pakistan started recognizing that they are no more based on ideology. They have to copy from India lots of Indian systems they may survive. But any sooner that Pakistan may break, I doubt it, because there are lots of things they are doing to remain on the track, and I think that's very difficult to say that this is going to happen. So I think India and its part have done the major role in keeping this part, stabilizing the South Asian affairs. And I don't think anything has changed really over the last 70 years between the two countries, up and down. If we look at the graph is showing us that sometimes it is a spike, sometimes it is down, sometimes it is stable, but it's never been on a horizontal line for a long year. So therefore, we need to learn how to deal with Pakistan in a very cautious manner. And I don't think the Pakistani is going to sell themselves out in total, because there is enough problem inside Pakistan, economically, politically, and also socio-economic, that have driven the people to such a dire
I've given the two
consequences that it
examples
may
of the models,
have its own
and
problem.
this, of course, merits conversation, and we should have it.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.